Hey, welcome to part 2 of setting up the Revel Vent for use on a patient. This is going to be a demonstration in real time of how to set this up so that when you get to the hospital you look like you know what you're doing. That's good stuff. And you will know what you're doing because you've watched this. So pay attention to this and you'll see exactly how to get things going when you're on your vent transfer. First thing, when you grab the vent in the bag, you're going to have a couple things. You have the vent, obviously. You're going to have a bag with tubing in it, and the tubing is going to look like this, so it's going to be put away there. It's got the corrugated tubing and a bunch of our tubes in it. That's your patient circuit. You're going to have the oxygen cylinder with you, D-cylinder. Make sure your regulator has one of those high-pressure ports on it. Most of ours do. There will be a regulator in the bag that has one. You're going to need your high-pressure oxygen tubing, which is going to screw into the D-tank, and it's going to have the connector to separate and go into the side of the ambulance on the oxygen tree there. And you're also going to have this book with Revel Vent instructions and setup, so it's going to show you how to do it. First thing you're going to do is open up your patient circuit before you even turn the vent on. You're going to plug in the various tubes to the side of the vent. So that's your actual ventilation tube that's going to provide the breath for your patient. The next one is a pressure sensor, so you're going to plug that in. That's got no cap on it. It just goes right onto the output there, or the input there. There are two screw-on tubes also. The white one goes on the bottom, and you're going to attach that. It's a clockwise spin. You can't see because my big hand's in the way, but you're spinning clockwise, and just until it's secure. You don't want to tighten it too much and break it off, but make it so it's snug. And then your yellow tube goes on the top part and plugs in there. So again, clockwise turn, plugging the tubes in, and we're good to go. So all of your stuff's connected. You want to make sure that everything is good there. After you get those tubes in place, you're going to hook up your oxygen. So the oxygen is going to screw onto your cylinder there. Make sure your cylinder's off initially, otherwise you're going to get an immediate rush of oxygen coming out. And then the other end plugs into the opposite side of the vent. So there's a little green nub there. You pull that off, you'll see the threaded input, and you're just going to, again, clockwise turn and screw that thing into the vent so that you have complete oxygen circuit hooked up. It takes a little bit of turning to get it all the way on, but make sure you do that because you don't want to get leaks from the vent and from the oxygen system. Once you're plugged in there, then you can turn your oxygen tank on and you're ready for action. Now in the bag you're going to see a practice lung. The practice lung is just really a paper, plastic bag rather, and it's going to hook onto the end of your patient circuit. It's going to simulate the vent being hooked to a patient. You don't need this to start, but it helps because you'll get a bunch of errors on your vent if you don't use that. Turning it on, lower left-hand corner, you click on. You're going to get an initial error report that says external power loss. That just means that you're not plugged in, so that's not a problem. The battery's running. You hit the yellow button on the lower right corner twice. Same patient would give you the settings that you just had on a patient you took last, but what you want to do is scroll with the purple dial to new patient, because 9 times out of 10, that's what you'll be doing. So you hit select. Patient ID, you're going to hit select again. And then you're going to hit select a third time, and that's going to allow you to scroll through numbers. So you're going to put the run number in for this call. So this call, let's say it was 14400. All right, so we're going to put in 14400, hitting select after each number is in place. You dial the numbers you want, and you get them in place. And then when you're done with that, you hit select the number of times you need to get through the rest of the numbers until you get to the next patient ID menu, and at that point you're going to scroll to patient size. Hit select. You want adult most of the time, so we're going to select adult, but you can also choose child and infant. Patient's either intubated or they're on CPAP, so we're going to do intubated. Hit select, and at this point we're going to immediately have the vent start running, and you're going to see the default settings for the vent. You'll probably get a couple initial alarms. You want to cancel those out by pressing the yellow lower right hand button several times, and that is the setting on the vent. What you'll also see is that the vent is now producing breath for the test lung, and we're good to go. Now probably the most difficult part of this is going to be changing our settings on the vent to what the patient at the hospital is set on. So let's say the patient at the hospital is set for a tidal volume of 350. We would go to the tidal volume button and press that, and you'll see that it highlights that, and then we dial it to 350, we press the button again, and we've changed our setting to 350. Another example, let's say the patient on the hospital vent is at 10 of PEEP. We can click that, highlight it, get to 10, and then press the button again. All of the changes you're going to make on this vent are going to be done the same way. You're pressing the button, dialing through, and then going back and pressing the button a second time. You're going to have a couple different modes here. We talked about modes before. So if the patient is in assist control mode and they need to switch to SimV, or the hospital has the patient in SimV, you highlight that, you use the purple dial to dial down to SimV, and again press the button to lock that in. We're going to move over here and say we want the patient to be on PRVC. So we click the button there and we roll the purple dial over to PRVC. Here's where we change the oxygen. So with the oxygen cylinder hooked up, we're going to be able to get the patients to whatever FiO2 that they need to be set on. Let's say the patient has a 75% from the hospital. We click that in. Immediately you're going to see an error here, and the error is telling me, hey dummy, you didn't turn the oxygen on. See low O2 pressure. So if that's the case, I'm going to simply go back and turn the oxygen tank on, which I'll do right now with my other hand. You can't see, and now we're good. So we're getting 75% oxygen delivery, and we're good to go. Now the vent is all set with patient settings. We're just going to disconnect the test lung. We're going to put our ETCO2, our capnography, on from our other monitor because we'll be using that for ETCO2 waveform. We're going to put that on the tube after we remove the hospital circuit, and then we're going to put our circuit onto the patient and switch over. This should be done pretty quickly so the patient's not without a vent for any amount of time. What you're going to notice is that with the ET tube there, you're going to get some bending of the tube. We're working on getting a device to keep that straighter, and we will be putting that out there pretty soon. But in the meantime, if you see a lot of bending, you may have to put some padding in there, a towel, or maybe clip that onto a wall of the ambulance next to the stretcher so it keeps that upright. You don't want to kink the tube or you'll start to get some high pressure warnings from the monitor. You want to wait at the hospital for a little while and just make sure that the patient's making a good transition. So if anything pops up that as an alarm you cannot clear or keeps popping up, it's good to have the doctor and the RT still there so you can try to fix the issue. Once you drop the patient off at the destination and take the patient off of your vent and put them on whatever vent they're going on, you're going to see a bunch of errors on our vent. All you have to do is turn our vent off at that point. So you're going to hold the button down for about 4 seconds, and then you're going to see a thing there that says saving config, and that's just saving the last settings. However, you hear that annoying beeping. That is beeping that's going to continue until you press the yellow button on the bottom, and that will cancel out your alarms. And then you're good to go. You'll return the vent back to Commerce, and life is good. You'll have 2 batteries on your call. One's in the vent and one is an extra. You can check the charge on each battery by pressing the button there, and 5 lights indicates the full charge. Each battery carries about 4 hours of charge, so you have 8 hours of vent time with the 2 batteries. Make sure they're both full if you're going on a long distance transfer. What you're going to see here is a square button on the bottom of the battery, and that's going to be the button that eventually unlocks the battery when you change it. The way you change the battery is to lift up on the metal tab. That will expel the battery, and you see you can't pull it out until you press that square button on the bottom to remove it. The monitor is going to alert the battery has been taken out. You've got about 5 minutes of charge built into the vent, so you can have time to switch the batteries over without losing your settings. And then you'll put the new battery in. You'll click that in place, and then you can clear out any error messages by using the silence button on the lower right side there, the yellow button, and you should be right back to where you were when you took the battery out. So, in general, it looks like a lot of buttons and a lot of lights, but don't be intimidated by the vent. It's got a pretty easy operation. What you're going to notice as you go through the vent and look at everything is there's a lot of settings that you can change on your own, and as we mentioned before, those settings are settings that you would change with the medical control of a physician or based on what a respiratory therapist at the facility you picked the patient up from had told you to do. If you look on the front of the monitor, you're going to see the bar up top right here, and this bar gives you the pressures. This is the airway pressures. When you switch into PRVC mode, that far right yellow line is the max pressure before you start to get a high pressure alert. And I'll show you in a second where you can change the high pressure alarms and other alarms that are standard on the device. All of the green numbers here are changeable values that you can adjust as we showed you in the video. And in fact, everything on that middle part there is a changeable value. You've got your breath rate, the breath per minute, you've got your inspiratory time, your tidal volume, PEEP, all those settings are on there. And again, you're just matching what the hospital is showing you. These numbers down here in red are settings for alarms. If you have a patient who for some reason is going to be on PRVC mode and is going to be popping above 40 for a pressure on a regular basis, then you can change this to 50 for the alarm or other such settings so that you don't have alarms going off every time the person has a breath. That's, again, something that you can change based on what a doctor or respiratory therapist tells you about the patient, but they're all changeable values. You will also see the digital readout up top where you get your error messages. It's going to cycle through a lot of the information on the vent as you are letting it work. So you'll be getting some data and information about pressures and times of inspiration and everything. It'll just kind of scroll through over and over again those numbers. Unless you need a specific number, you don't have to worry about those areas. Well, thank you for taking the time to watch these 2 videos, and be sure to take the quiz afterwards so you can get credit for taking the training and CME as well. And please contact a supervisor immediately if you get involved with a vent transfer and you're unsure of how to operate something. We are going to recommend that you look into this training, maybe redo it every couple of months, every quarter, just to keep yourself up to date on the vent. It is a little more sophisticated than the previous one, and we just want to make sure everybody is comfortable with it. Again, this is Sean Halsman. Thank you very much, and have a good day.